The Cotroni crime family, originally Cotrone Italian, co, modifier letter vertical line tro, modifier letter triangular colon ni is an organized crime family based in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. The FBI considered the family a branch of the Bonanno crime family. A Calabrian immigrant from Mamola, Vincenzo Cotroni established the organization in the 1940s. Their territory once covered most of southern Quebec and Ontario. An internal war broke out between the Calabrian and Sicilian factions of the family in the late 1970s, which resulted in the death of acting Captain Paolo Violi and his brothers. This allowed the Sicilian Rizzuto crime family to overtake the Cotronis as the preeminent crime family in Montreal. Vincenzo died of cancer in 1984, followed by his brother Frank in 2004. History: in 1924, Vincenzo Cotroni immigrated to Montreal, Quebec, with his two sisters, Margarita and Pamina, and his brother Giuseppe. His two other brothers, Frank and Michel, were later born in Montreal. In the 1950s, the family formed a strong connection to the New York Bonanno crime family, as the crime family began controlling the majority of Montreal's drug trade. In 1953, Carmen Lilo Galanti, an influential member of the New York-based Bonanno crime family, arrived in Montreal and worked with Cotroni. Galanti planned to make Montreal a pivotal location in the importation of heroin from overseas for distribution in New York City and across the United States in the French Connection. Police also estimated that Galanti was collecting gambling profits in Montreal worth about $50 million per year. In April 1956, due to Galanti's strong-arm extortion tactics, the Canadian government deported him back to the United States. In the late 1960s, the Cotronis had violent feuds with French-Canadian mobster Richard Blas, with Cotroni associate Joe DiMaio doing much of the enforcing. On May 7, 1968, Blas and Robert Allard attempted an ambush of Frank outside his home. Two of his bodyguards were killed, but Frank escaped. In the 1960s and 70s, Cotroni used associate William Obi Abram to supervise a bookmaking network in the Ottawa Hall area that handled around $50,000 in bets per day, with 25% going to Paolo Violi. Obi also served as Cotroni chief banker and financial advisor, responsible for laundering money. For Montreal's Expo 67, Obi also helped the Cotronis land the meat and vending machine supply contract, most of which was tainted meat. In 1973, Obi was charged with tax fraud, sentenced to 20 months in jail, and ordered to pay $683,046 in back taxes. In the early 1970s, Cotroni transferred the day-to-day activities of the family to his Calabrian compatriot Violi, a Cappuccino together with Nicholas DiIorio, Frank Cotroni and Luigi Greco. Cotroni's role became more that of an advisor to the younger Calabrian. Greco led the Sicilian faction of the family until his death in 1972. Soon after, in 1973, a violent internal power struggle broke out between Sicilian and Calabrian factions in the family, notably aspiring Sicilian mob boss Niccolo Rizzuto. During the violent mafia war in Montreal, Violi and his brothers were murdered along with others through the mid-1970s to the early 1980s, when the war ceased. By the mid-1980s, the Rizzuto crime family emerged as Montreal's preeminent crime family after the Turf War. The Calabrian faction continued to operate with Frank Cotroni, who had been in prison from 1975 to 1979, as acting boss for his ill brother after the early 1980s. When Vic Cotroni died of cancer in 1984, Frank was left as boss. Frank Cotroni developed connections with French-Canadian Real Simard, who became his driver and hitman. In 1986, Simard turned informant after his arrest, confessing to 5 murders and involvement with Cotroni. Cotroni was sentenced to 8 years in prison for manslaughter in 1987. Frank Cotroni died of cancer in August 2004. leaving the Rizzuto-Sicilian faction as the most powerful crime family in Canada. On November 4, 2012, Joe DiMallo, a longtime ally of the Cotroni family, was murdered outside his Montreal home. Police believe his murder is part of an ongoing power struggle between the Sicilians and their rivals. References: Lamotte, Lee and Adrian Humphreys, 2008. The Sixth Family. The Collapse of the New York Mafia and the Rise of Vito Rizzuto, Toronto, John Wiley & Sons Canada Limited, ISBN 0-470-15445-4, Revised edition.